Okay, so in class today we started our big project for the insect robot. And we jumped right in. People started experimenting with their shapes and that. And this might mean that I'm an evil teacher, but I periodically through the semester, I just kind of, we just dive into something. And part of it is just to stress test what students know or they don't know. It's not meant to be cruel, but it's a good way to just see what, where we're at in the class. And then usually what I do is kind of like we regroup and we break down the tools just in a little simpler way, and then we re-engage kind of the larger project. So that's what's going to happen in my next class on Thursday. But in advance of that, what I wanted to do is try to show a few of these tools and break them down a little bit more. And these will be similar. I did some very quick demos in class, but I want to show like here's why you would use extrude, inner extrude, bevel, and cut, and utilize the primitives in such a way that you can make these shapes, right? So I did this one in class. I'll start with it with a cylinder. So it's just still a primitive. Then I made 72 rotational segments, so it's really smooth. And then one height segment, right? So I'm going to hit C so I can go into edit mode, and I'm going to go into polygon. And I'm just using the live selection tool, right, to move around and select that. I'll use the scale tool just to start so that I get kind of a little bevel here. I think that's kind of nice, just so it isn't perfect. And as I model this, it might look like a radar tower or a thumbtack, or maybe you can imagine this as like the very tail end of like a wasp stinger or something like that. But I'm just going to use extrude and inner extrude. So with these polygons selected, I'm going to right click and it brings up all the things that I can use. And here is extrude inner. So I'll just select that. Now, I don't want to click on the polygons or the tool. I just want to, with my left mouse button, click and drag out here. And as I move the mouse side to side, what it has done is it's given me a new polygon, and I can increase the offset in one direction or another, right? The positive or the negative when it actually goes past this. I'm not going to do that right here, but I will do it in a second. But what I'm trying to do is just create another section so that I create a thickness, right? A loop from here to here, because the next thing I want to do in this case is extrude, and I'm just going to do inner extrude. Extrude, and I'm going to extrude in this depth in the negative direction. I'm going to drag it far enough so that it actually goes through the bottom of the polygons that I had there a second ago, and then I'm just going to bring it back up. And I'm just moving the mouse side to side to change that depth. I could do it interactively and really say, hey, it's minus 15 centimeters. That's perfect. So I'm just going to keep doing this. Extrude inner, give myself a new copy. I don't know why it has to be that. I'm just making this up, right? Extrude inner, extrude inner. I'll do something like that, and then extrude. Maybe what I'll do is extrude one really far out, and then do extrude again. In fact, let's go back to this. When I do extrude inner, I can go past. You can see that there's a weird shading error because there's two sets of polygons. There's the new ones that are here in the center laying flat on the old ones. The new ones here in the center, and then these new ones that have extended out, right, are laying in the same plane with each other. So this is a problem only if I leave it at this. If I right click again and say extrude, I've now left a copy of polygons down here, and as I pull up a new section, right, I get this. I'll do extrude inner again, pull this, and before I extrude, I'm just going to move it up so I get just kind of an angled piece like that. Then I'll extrude inner. Let's do extrude, and this time go in, extrude inner. I'll move this one up again so I get that repetition of that kind of shape there, which I kind of like. Extrude inner, and And I'll scale that down so it's like a stinger, right? So this could be the top of a building. This also could be a mechanical part that goes on the backside of this, oops, let's go this way, of this wasp, right? Okay, so that's piece number one. Let's look at another, let's start with a cube. And what I want to do is kind of make this flange piece. And I built something like this in a little example. I showed the little grasshopper leg. Let's say I wanted to cut a hole in this because this part is going to connect to another part on the underside of the body, right? So I need a pin to go through this, and I need it to kind of change direction one way or the other. Several ways I could approach this, but I'm just going to start with a cube. That's about the right size. I need to extrude a section out down here at the bottom, but if I just do extrude from here, I get the whole entire thing. Ooh, I clicked on matrix extrude, sorry about that. There we go. Right, that's the whole section of that. Well, just like I wanted to create the lip before when I was doing that cylinder, what I want to do is just have a section where I only get the polygon here. I don't want this section. So to do that, we need to add a cut. So if I right click and I say loop path cut, or I'll get out of that tool, if I hit K and L, so anything that fits under the cutting K and then JKL, so loop here. And if I hover my cursor over an edge, it highlights where it wants to make that cut. I'll just do that about there. And then I'll go back into selection mode and get this and extrude out a section. I'm going to extrude another section. Then I'm going to extrude this section. And then I'm going to extrude one more time. And as I click and drag, I extrude out a section and it's done. And then when I click and drag again, that's like saying, hey, do another extrusion. Let's do another. In the extrusion tool, I can select things as long as I don't click and drag. So I'm going to click on the one over here on the side and the one here. And then if I click and drag, I get a new extrusion, right? Just going in whatever direction that the normal of the polygons. And I had 2 polygons selected, so they went in those directions, right? Okay, so this is an okay shape. It doesn't, it's not overly exciting. Well, what I want to do is maybe bevel this a little bit, make it a little more interesting. So I'm going to go into edge mode. We haven't looked at the bevel yet. So I'm going to select these. You don't know, let's just do all 3 of these. And what happens if I right click and I say a bevel, what it's going to say is this is the center point, and then it's going to split that, and it's going to run a new edge this way and a new edge that way and connect in between them. And I'm also going to have, in fact, let's put this back to the default. All right, so this is at the default, there's 0 offset and 0 subdivisions. So once again, without clicking on something, just here in dead space, I'm going to left mouse button, click and drag. Let me back up here. Let me do the selection again. All right, so I'm going to click and drag, and you can see I get this offset distance of 40, and if I add some subdivisions, right, for each time in between, how many cuts, 1, 2 in there, so I get 3 segments if you want to think of it that way, but it's 2 cuts, 3, let's make it 12. Right, so I get this nice round cut, or bevel across that surface. Come back to this one here. Actually, let's do it here. I'll do that as a bevel. Let's do this one as a little bevel. Right, so this is an interesting shape. I could also do the put this into a Boolean object and cut some holes into it, or something like that might be interesting. The last one I just want to show, if I click this one here and I do bevel, sometimes you can get weird errors within the, and there's a variety of different ways of trying to, how we want to change that. I'm messing with the tension of this and I'm getting all kinds of weirdness it's messing with that shape. I'm going to leave it at 100. So it did the, the beveling fine here, but it did kind of, because of the way that corner was set up, it created some problems while I'm at that. And I just wanted you to be aware that the bevel tool like that can have issues. So I'm going to select all the polygons, kind of hard to see there, sorry. I'm going to select all those and just delete them. It's going to create a hole right inside of there. And I'm going to right click and say close polygon hole. And Cinema will roll over and it sees like, hey, there's a hole. I'll fill this with this big old polygon. This is an n-gon, right? It's a polygon that has more than 4 edges. We're not going to make this a subdivision surface, so I don't really have to worry about that. And I'll select all this. And then again, right click and close polygon. Right? So this is doing a reasonably good job. It's nice and clean. The last thing I'll say about the shape, I didn't show on the first piece. In fact, maybe, you know what, I'll hide this one and let's go back to that first one. So this looks really nice. I do have all these little edges and they're perfect little edges. In some instances, this will be fine. It is nice to get a little bit of rounding, right? So it isn't perfect and clean. It looks more machined and natural. This is why we would sometimes put this in a subdivision surface. I'm trying to stay away from that and use different methods. So for this cylinder, one thing I can do is underneath the deformer, there's this great one called bevel. And I'm going to take the bevel and just put it on the cylinder. And what it does is it says any angle on the surface that exceeds this threshold, I'm going to bevel it. Just like I did before, right? It selected those edges and it put a bevel here. And it just split it. And I can add, say, a couple subdivisions. Let's just do, I don't know, 3 sounds fine to me. So now this has a nice little edge on it. It's still pretty tight. I can make it a little tighter. Let's do just 0.5. But these will catch light if this is a metallic reflective surface, right? This is going to look really good. I'll hide this one and let's go back to the other. This one, because it has some of these funky polygons, this might give us problems, but we'll go ahead and try it. Why not at the end of the tutorial, right? Let's see if I can blow it up. Yeah, and this seems to have worked out pretty good. I have a nice clean edge on there. Maybe I'll make that distance a little bit bigger. You have to be careful, right? Some of these edges will cross over each other and do some weird things. But so for a little tiny offset, this works great. You can see I do get some of this shading error stuff, and this is where we talked about the Fong break in class. So I'm just gonna select this one to create a break anywhere the rounding is. So from the shading standpoint, it doesn't give us any errors. Okay? So that's an interesting thing. This started as a cube, right? And we just kind of boxied it up into shape, created little sections, added some bevels manually, and then used this bevel deformer to create these 2 shapes. Let's show this one as well. So I don't know, let's take this, let's finish this off, right? This one. Maybe this is some kind of antennae on the object. And since I built one over here, let's just take, this is the cylinder, right? Let's go ahead and use the symmetry tool. And I'll put the cylinder inside of that. And the cylinder says, let's go ahead and mirror the XZ or the XY plane. So the plane that runs down the middle, right, where the Y and the Z are, the side view right here. Right, here's the Y and the Z. So let's make a mirrored copy on the other side. And look at that, right? That's pretty cool. That was a cylinder and that was a cube. And we've created this funky little thing. I don't even know. It's some like antennae radar thing that sits on top of it. There's lots of little things we could make that. I'm getting ideas just sitting here thinking about it. All right, so that's a little over 15 minutes. Practice with just extrude, inner extrude, bevel, and the cut tool, the cut loop, the edge loop tool, and see what you can come up with. There also is that little bevel deformer, right? And again, it's just based on the threshold, wherever those angles are, it's going to do that. Now, this doesn't fix everything. You can run into problems with this pretty quickly. But if you model things relatively cleanly and keep it simple, it will work wonders for you. But that's already an interesting mechanical shape. Maybe it's the beginning of a mechanical tortoise. This is its head coming out. I don't know. All right. Hope that helps.